Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining us for today's webinar. I'm Aditya Sharma, co-founder at High Counselor and your host for today's webinar. Our guest company today is Foghorn, and we have Greg Mikowski who will be telling us all about their fantastic company. We have a lot to cover, so let's get right into it.
Thank you very much.
So here is the agenda for today's webinar. We'll start with a quick introduction on what High Counselor is. We'll then begin our interview with Foghorn. We'll first spend a little bit of time learning more about company, what Foghorn does, what it's like to work there, and a lot more. We'll then talk about Foghorn open positions and their requirements. This will also take a good portion of today's webinar, but it should give you a good idea on what Foghorn is looking for and give you some insider tips on how to increase your chances for landing a job. At any point during the interview with Foghorn, if you have any questions, please submit them on the chat box and we'll try to answer them during the Q&A portion of the webinar. Finally, last but not the least, we'll spend a couple of minutes on the application process and show you how you can apply to them after the webinar. So what is High Counselor? High Counselor is a unique platform specifically designed to help job seekers who are looking to connect with and get career coaching services from company insiders or industry experts. High Counselor also provides one-on-one personalized training and an exclusive access to job opportunities, which is today's webinar primary goal. If you're not familiar with YouTube channel, to ask question, you simply type them in the chat box in your YouTube control panel as illustrated here. We may give you a lot of questions, but we'll try to answer as many as we can during the Q&A portion of the webinar. So in the next 1 to 2 minutes, please take a moment to share this webinar on your social media with your friends who are looking for career opportunities in San Francisco Bay Area, specifically in data science related roles. So let's start with the introduction of Foghorn. Greg, thank you so much again for joining us today. We really appreciate your time and participation in this webinar. So why don't we get started with a brief background of yourself, about your current role at Foghorn and opportunities available at Foghorn.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time. If I can, I'll share my screen.
For sure, please go ahead.
Okay. So I'll start off with a little bit of background about Foghorn. So we're an edge AI or machine learning for industrial IoT or Internet of Things. So background on us, these are some of our investors: Intel, Saudi Aramco, Dell, GE, Bosch, Honeywell. So we went after what's called smart money. Intel and Dell would be involved in a lot of the edge devices, edge computing devices. People like Saudi Aramco would be like a possible end user, like Honeywell. Honeywell and GE would be involved in more of the edge. Bosch would have a lot of sensors. So there's a lot of different things. We came out of the Hive in Palo Alto, a startup incubator. So we began at 2015. We've had 3 rounds of funding, I'm happy to announce publicly, 72 million, over 100 industrial Internet of Things use cases deployed globally. We have 50+ partners in IoT, system integration, cloud, 30+ awards for different industrial AI, edge computing, IoT types of categories. So some of the different recognition of various sources. So we're looking at limited or no connectivity. So this is why edge. So if you're working on a mobile app or you're working on an edge app, the data is being generated in the cloud. It makes sense to do computing in the cloud. Well, with a lot of the machines, it helps a lot where the edges are generating the data, where the wind turbine is generating the data, where the elevator is generating the data, the car engine of the Porsche engine is generating the data, to just do the computing right there, right then, now. So because we're right next to where the data is being generated, then we might have limited or no connectivity. We don't have to deal with bandwidth costs and moving large volumes of data. Although the edge is anti-cloud by any means, will integrate cloud. We're doing large model retraining, certainly. And we can certainly are integrated with the three big cloud providers. But the edge is, computing is more on the edge for most of the workload, most of the effort. That also reduces the risk of cyber attacks. We have very low latency, and we can act very quickly on real-time decision-making, adjusting control systems. So very high fidelity analytics on streaming data. So we'll take data like video, vibration, audio, 3D imaging, other traditional sensors, temperature, pressure, velocity, events on a calendar, for example. We'll go through a data ingestion layer. We can do some, VEL is our proprietary language. It's a functional language that can run on multiple cores of a Raspberry Pi, 8 cores or Intel, or on Android. We also have an Edge ML that supports your typical Docker stack with Python for your scikit-learn or your TensorFlow type of stack. We also do training in PyTorch and convert it with Onyx into the TensorFlow or TensorFlow Lite. We're doing a lot of work on edgification, shrink models or speed them up by a factor of 5 or more, and then publishing them out to, say, a private cloud. We can publish them out to alerts or operators, to a time series database, to different control signals. And so this is our edge. And so we work with a lot of energy efficiencies, operating efficiencies. Some of the industries we're working in are manufacturing, a lot of oil and gas projects, buildings or smart cities, like the elevators, or safety in work sites, construction sites, transportation, like inside car engines or in fleets of 18-wheelers, telco operations, dealing things with cell phone towers or 5G, and integrating with channels like telco, system integrators, or value-added resellers, and especially with the 5G having low latency. So with Stanley Black & Decker, some of the things we're doing are vision-based tape printing defect detection. So we're going by with 60 frames a second on the images, looking at a picture of 1.5 inches, and then trying to detect where the defects are, which could be a paint splatter. The digit that's printed on the tape measure might be slightly faded. You can see some of the background showing through, or the tick marks on it could have flagging, like streaks going sideways. Predictive control of oven for the different heating parameters, reducing defects on what's being produced. Anomaly detection, so we have a lot of anomaly detection projects, outlier detection. So with GE capacitor predictive quality, Honeywell, a number of projects, barcode reconstruction, so increasing the resolution with deep learning to do better barcode reconstruction and faster barcode. Biztel is a chip manufacturing company in Seoul, South Korea. So we're working on wire bonder fault detection system. So different things with Bosch and other projects. So with Saudi Aramco, so we're currently working on a blowout preventer. So in a oil drilling site, you can have a blowout, which is back pressure of oil from underground. And the blowout preventer would need to crush the pipes and stop any oil from coming up and out. So as the pipe goes in, they need to pull it out periodically to change a bit or something. So when they do that, the pipes could be covered with a lot of gunk and mud, and we have to detect where the overlap of two pipes connected is only 5% wider. That's where you can't use a blowout preventer. We're doing other things with foaming for cleaning out the sulfur from the natural gas coming out of the ground, vision-based personal protective equipment. So this would be the hard hat, glasses, earplugs, but also slip and fall. Are you texting while you're bulldozing? All sorts of things like that. So those are some of the types of things. With Porsche, so multi-factor video-based driver authentication, so recognizing a face, and more interestingly, doing face spoofing detection. You know, because somebody could steal your car by holding up a printout of your face in front of you. Well, we have to detect that spoofing and detection. The data miner could say, well, I'll look to see frame to frame if the person's moving around, which a printout wouldn't. But then you could hold up a phone next to your face, and then the phone could show a moving face. So you could try and do some kind of 2D, 3D detection. Then what if the spammer or the spoofer puts on something like a Hollywood mask, like rubber applications and things? So we were able to get around detecting that as well. Right now, we're just finishing up a second project in Porsche inside the engine, where we're doing different predictions of driver behavior inside the engine so we can better optimize the acceleration and miles per gallon. So we're also working on a number of green projects, building energy projects. So dealing with Honeywell building management systems and one of their large hotel chain clients, we're just finishing up a project where we can optimize the HVAC temperature systems inside there so we can reduce the energy usage. And then we're starting up other projects with school districts and various other cases. And that's nice as a IoT project because everybody has an energy bill. You have a good solid target output variable to optimize. So there's advantages of that. We're working with different telcos. If you think of a cell phone tower, would also have a base station, a small building that would have its own computer center inside, and that would raise the temperature by 30 degrees compared to outside temperature. So there's a lot we can do in energy savings again with the HVAC or the temperature modulation. But there's a good 20 cases you can do around the cell phone tower site. And also, there's also a lot of projects you can do around a light pole in a city, which sounds strange, but it's where a lot of the smart city operations come in between networking connectivity, cameras, and all sorts of other sensors for smart cities. A lot of times are installed on the light posts in the smart cities. So that's a lot about the company. A little bit about myself. I joined Foghorn about 2 years ago. And since then, I've grown it from 2 people reporting to me to 15. Just had another person join yesterday. I've got half the team is in US and Sunnyvale, California. Half the team is in Pune, India. And so we've got the same job requirements for people in both locations. So if you go to foghorn.io and you go to the careers section, look for data scientist, here's the job description. So currently, I should change this. I am looking for in the US. Most quarters I'm hiring in both US and India. But I certainly am hiring now. So what I'm looking for is the core qualifications is somebody who can own a project that might be 2 to 12 months in duration. So you would own the project, say, to optimize the car engine or to do outlier detection for a certain kind of manufacturing defect or compressor. We sometimes get into reading about new scientific instruments like spectroscopy or chemical analysis. So I look for people that can innovate, analyze a customer requirement, develop a solution. I'll do a lot of the work in the project planning up front and trying to set expectations on what we can do and can't in a given time frame. And then if I have an idea who might be working on it, I'm certainly happy to involve them in the planning as best as I can. And then the projects, we're a software company first. And so all the software or data science consulting projects would be deployed through our Foghorn platform. So that would be like a Docker. So I've got 4 core qualifications that are must-haves. So I'm looking for somebody that's got all of these bullets in the core. Bonus qualifications, if you meet the core, then consider yourself as having extra points to compete with other people who are applying. So in the core, I'm really looking for people who've deployed at least 3 data mining models in the past. When I say deployed, I mean, other people have used the models, they're running in production. You're not coming up with a sales forecast that's a one-off effort. Or you're, something that might be banner advertising, scoring, what models to put for internet advertising. It can be different verticals. I've been in a lot of verticals in the past. I've been deploying data mining since '92 myself. So, and I'm looking, if you want to have a good competitive advantage with other applicants, if you could write up briefly on the 3 data mining models in the past, and maybe talk about a PSR, like a problem, solution, result on, what you've done. So what's the problem statement, say a newspaper title? Your solution approach, just give me a couple sentences, 2 or 3. Some of the algorithms used, some interesting tidbits, cool IP you may have thought of. And then the results. If you deployed it, did it save somebody $8 million a year on estimate? Kind of thing. So other things I'm looking for, 3 years of industry work experience, but it could be 10. So because when I hire, the seniority title, seniority and salary level are set to your experience level of the person. So the people I tend to hire might be master's or PhD more commonly, but that's not a requirement. If you don't have as much in the way of education, but you have more years of experience, I'm quite happy. So programming in Python is core. So we will have some Python quiz during some of the on-site interview. But we're focused not on everything in Python, but around what you'd use as a data scientist. So scikit-learn kind of algorithms, prediction algorithms, clustering algorithms are kind of core. And hopefully you're not a one algorithm person, like everything must be solved with a regression, because a lot of projects end up with different requirements. So if you can talk about different kinds of algorithms you have experience with, and then this gets back to your deployment. So here are some of the things I'm looking for, like regression, neural nets. Deep learning is nice to have, but it's not a minimum requirement. Decision trees support vector machines, ensembles. Certainly I'm interested in clustering. Bonus qualifications could be soft skills, able to work with clients and customers, kind of in setting expectations and meeting expectations. For this role, you may have a half-hour call with your client once a week at a time that they set. It could be early or late. Experience adapting to the technical dialogue or the right level for the audience. So just because you read a journal paper doesn't mean that's the level of detail you should speak with at a client. And some clients you'll be talking to, there'll be a data science team. Sometimes they may be a mechanical engineering team that could be very technical in mechanical engineering or very technical in chemistry, but not so technical in data science terms. And so kind of being able to have some sensitivity and adapt to the level of jargon that's helpful for the client and the level of detail. So technical skills, typically math, PhD in computer science, but it could also be math, statistics. It could be mechanical engineering, chemical engineering. I'm okay with complements. Different kinds of experiences are good. So I'm looking for people that have managed past models, for their full life cycle would be great. And then if you replaced it, if you have experience in deep learning, TensorFlow, Keras, CNNs, or other time series things, that's great. One thing that may attract people is if you don't have deep learning experience, we'll train you on the job. So think about it. If you've been a data scientist, but you just haven't gotten into this new cool stuff, but you can't get into it until you have the experience, you feel like you're in a chicken or the egg. Well, we can break that cycle. Come to us. We'll train you. We'll get you up to speed. I can't promise every project for everybody would be deep learning, but it's been about half. And then there's another of the things I won't go into great details, some of our verticals. So that's a lot of what I wanted to cover. So did you want to open it up for questions or anything else you want to go through next?
Sure. So first of all, thank you so much, Greg, for sharing the background of the company and the job position. That's very, very helpful. So let's take a few questions related to job position first, and then we'll talk about more on the company level. So regarding the job position, what's the typical career path for a data scientist at Foghorn? Like what are the career opportunities, say 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line?
Oh, great question. Well, I've got a list of data science modifiers. So there's like a junior data scientist might be, or intern going up to data scientist level 1, 2, 3. Different levels of senior data scientist and principal data scientist. I've built data science teams in the past since 2010. And I've also realized some people like to have a track of career growth that they can go to be individual contributor, but they're not hitting a salary ceiling. They can still become more senior. Or other people like to have a career path where they can be in a management role. So I have a salary or title progression that supports both, being sensitive to that. Now, again, there's a combination of where your skills are and also what the need is. So if I don't need 5 managers because of the number of people I have, I'm not necessarily going to promote people to be a management role just because they want it, but I've set up the structure, the progression, because I want to have people to give a long-term career path here. It's important to treat people with respect, and it's like a family. So like them to stay.
Hmm. That's very helpful. Thank you so much. You can probably stop sharing your screen.
Okay.
Cool. So, what are the challenges associated with a data scientist role in a day-to-day work life?
I would say just getting into some of the projects as you work on a project for 2 or 3 months, then getting into the role of that one project. But it gives you some good focus and also gives you good ownership, and you get to see your contribution to the company's bottom line. So as we talk about the variety of projects, challenges, I don't know if I would consider it a challenge because I enjoy learning. So many times I'll have to do some more background reading in one particular vertical or another, uh, read up about oil drilling or read up about organic chemistry processing. One project, we were able to reduce batch production of chemicals that took a day and a quarter to 2 days from 8% waste down to 2% waste. But we did have to do some background reading to understand more. So I would say one of the challenges, and it may be a reward as well, is the fact that there's always a lot of good stuff to learn. Some people I've talked to as candidates said, well, I've been in finance, but I'm going to be working with the same 100 fields for 10 years. I'm going to get bored to tears. You don't have that problem here.
Great. Perfect. And what are the expectations from someone who join at this role, say in the first 3 to 6 months?
Well, the first month would be more getting started, training, getting to know our product, learn how to put Python scoring code into our EdgeML, learning the Vel language. And then also as a training exercise, as other people in projects need a little help here or there, then I might give you something meaningful. And so it'll be more useful than a, say, Hello World project, because it'll be helping out one of your compatriots that's helping giving you some training. And so then you can help them, but I'll put it in a non-critical path in a comfortable, safe environment for learning. So that would be getting started. And then as we get different projects coming up that are billable, then you could get assigned a billable project. Between billable projects, sometimes you're working on different research efforts like edgification, shrinking models, how to go from 32-bit weights to 8-bit weights, 8-bit weights down to 1-bit weights where we can do binary adding, or also looking into ways of doing video processing, different kind of image recognition, trial and errors, possibly sales demos. So there's a variety of background research projects that we work on just to support sales. And there's always also a lot of new projects coming in, 2 or 3 times as many things in the pipeline. So people are asking for proposals. So if you're not on a billable project, I might ask you to help me out, do some of the data investigation or ask questions as we develop our proposal. And then we're also doing a significant amount of product development or product prototyping. We're not an engineering group. We have a full engineering company to support us, but we can do some of the leading edge, go from a consulting project to a platform that could get productized. So there's a number of things that we're doing that are getting converted into a product that Foghorn can sell that's got a major data science portion inside.
Mhm. That's very helpful. And Greg, what is the typical day of a data scientist at Foghorn like? At the beginning, you mentioned that you're working with a lot of international clients. So is there a travel involved in this job as well?
Not much, or not by default. I would do more of the travel than anybody, but some of the people haven't done any travel. A few of the people that were don't have kids have done some travel for maybe a few days here or a week there. But last year, I spent a week in India and a week in Germany in June, and then later on, a week in Seoul, Korea, visiting some clients and prospects. And then I went back to Stuttgart, Germany again. But other travel, we've got another parallel department that's called Technical Services, and they do a lot of the sensor installations, a lot of the Foghorn installations, and they hire people that have deep vertical experience, a number of people in manufacturing and a number of people in oil and gas, and they're in distributed locations throughout the world. So Tech Services already has people stationed in Saudi Arabia, in Japan, in Korea, in Germany. So that mitigates a lot of the travel from data scientists. So then we can just get the data to here. So a typical work week would be more like roughly 9 to 6 plus some off-hour phone calls and meetings. Off hours would be, we have a weekly, or we have a stand-up twice a week at 9 in the evening on Monday with the US and the Pune, India team, and then Thursday morning at 9. So we take turns which team it inconveniences. And then if you've got client calls, some client calls might be in 7 in the morning once a week, if they're in Europe or something, or 4 in the afternoon if it's in Japan. So it really depends on the client, their location. But we have at least half our clients are in the US as well.
Mm-hmm. Great. And Greg, we are getting a lot of questions on our live YouTube channel. And for our attendees, we'll cover those questions in the next 15 minutes once we cover all the generic questions related to this job position in the company.
Okay.
So, Greg, my next question is, what's the interview format for this position? Although you mentioned some of the very important things when you're talking about this job position, but does this also include behavioral interview portion? Also, is there any fixed structure or does it vary from candidate to candidate?
No, we have a pretty fixed structure. We have a list of questions we go through at each stage. So stage 1, I'd say, would be phone screens. So we usually do 2 phone screens. The order does not matter. One phone screen would be with me, and then I would give kind of a background on Foghorn. And since I don't expect people to be in a encyclopedia to have memorized the hundreds of algorithms that are out there, rather than having memorized, I give a training and reasoning test. So I'll teach them something about a parameter that may be on a familiar algorithm, but something that might be new to them. Teaching them something small. I'll show some slides, some graphics, teach them for about 15 minutes. And then I'll ask 2 questions that'll be logic or inferential reasoning that could just demonstrate their understanding. And I give them some time if they need to stop and think and sketch a little bit. It's a 15-minute time to answer their questions. And I don't mind going more. I'm not too tight on that, but I don't want to go like an hour. So that would be one of the phone calls with me. The other phone call that would be with one of my staff, and they take turns but it's the same set of questions. It's a lot more on if the candidate lists different algorithms on their resume, then we would ask questions about those, or things that would be commonly in scikit-learn, things that are related to prediction or clustering. Just a quick test, just to validate things on your resume have some reality. If there's some things that you have less experience to, then raise your hand early on, and we won't have expectations. But we're expecting, if you listed an algorithm on your resume, you should be able to talk about it for at least 5 minutes, describe what the parameters are, describe what the order of operations, is it order n or n squared? How fast does it take to train, to score? What are the implications of different things? How generalization is affected? So those would be kind of common questions. Now for the on-site interview, then we usually have a 1-day interview to try and cover everything. And again, that would be with my staff and myself. So with the staff, then there'd be one person might cover programming questions in Python on a whiteboard. Another person might be covering more math questions. Somebody else might cover solving something like a project they worked on. How might you approach this? We're not looking for the exact answer that they came up with. We're looking up for a plausible answer. We want to hear about your thought process, your reasoning. And then for myself, when I give the interview, then I'll give another one of those, what I would call holodeck or simulator kind of examples. So I'll ask a question of, hey, the client came up and said, this is the kind of data we have. I'll show a PowerPoint screen. So how would you approach solving this? This was a little 2-week effort. You can describe what you would do in this, and sometimes you don't know what you would do until you write a program and run it on the data. Well, go ahead, specify what's your program going to do. I'll trust that you can code because I'll have other people test that. And I'll tell you what the answer is because I worked on the problem quite in depth and I know it quite well. And then I can give you what the answers are. Or you can say, oh, I have a question for the client, and I'll role play the client. Or I have a question for another person in the data science team, and I can role play that. So I can role play different actors, and we can simulate you going through the life of a 2-week project in 45 minutes or an hour, 15 minutes. So that would be kind of the nature of the things of the interview.
That's very, very helpful. Thank you so much, Greg. And Greg, are there any resources that you'd like to recommend to prepare for this interview? Although it seems that there are a lot of skills required, a good amount of experience is needed, at least 2 to 3 years, right? Managing a couple of projects. But still, is there anything that you'd like to recommend to our attendees that they can use to prepare for this interview?
Yeah, no, preparation is great. I would say being able to articulate about your past projects, maybe just review. I don't want anything proprietary because I want you to respect our confidentiality, just like I want to respect confidentiality of your past clients. But just being able to articulate, have it fresh in your memory. Another thing is if there's algorithms in the past that you say well, it doesn't hurt to review them and to talk about them. Just go ahead and read through different articles, see how would you explain or whiteboard something if you have to do some diagrams. So I would say more refreshing, not learning from scratch, but just refreshing. So that way, when you get a question, you can be more articulate in the answer.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. And Greg, do you support international candidates like with their H-1B visa processing, or do you only consider candidate with the US citizenship?
I would like to, but we're already at our 15% federal limit. So we can't handle people from Canada because that's a different program. But if it's a H-1B, then in general, it's no, because the number of people that we've hired are already, the company-wide is at kind of a 15% federal limit. So it's not a matter of us doing the paperwork. It's a matter of other limitations that we have.
So that said, like you're not currently supporting H-1B applications.
No.
Okay, cool. And what's the Foghorn company culture like?
I would say pretty respectful, focused on just getting value for the client. We know we need to have good communication. We don't have to, we want to hustle and deliver good, solid value for the clients, but just be good at setting expectations. I believe vacations are expected norm, but on the other hand, you have to give me a couple weeks notice. If I'm going to start a 6-month project, I'll ask you, do you think you might have a week of vacation here or there? Let me know. We'll just bump out the project end date by a couple of weeks and we can accommodate that. I may not have to know, oh, is it week 1 or 2 of some month, but I know it'll affect the overall project plan, so I'll bump it out. So that's fine. I have a number of people have little kids at home, and even one of them has had a second little kid. So the work family life hasn't chased him away. So
okay.
This is my 7th startup. I've worked at many startups, so we do work hard, but we tend to be focused. I like to give a degree of flexibility because I'd like to earn it so people can invest it back in the clients is my attitude. So
Definitely.
both keep people happy and keep people invested in clients.
Great. And apart from technical skills, are there any other qualities or skills that are appreciated at Foghorn?
I would say just being okay to be data driven and open to different ideas and debating ideas is helpful. So while I have a lot of experience, I have no problems being challenged because what I'm committed to is client success and learning. And so if we're in a room and we're trying to come up with brainstorming solutions, the client technical person may suggest some ideas. Different senior people on my team may suggest ideas. A junior person may suggest ideas. I may suggest some ideas, and we'll just test them out in the data. And whatever works best on the client metrics, we've learned something. If we learn something, we've won. So it's not an ego thing. If we're committed to the right objectives, um, such as learning and client value, then we all win. And it's not really a stressful environment. It's just a collaboration.
Hmm. Perfect. And what are the growth opportunities available at Foghorn? Where do you see Foghorn in the next 5 years and then next 10 years?
Well, we just got our Series C funding. And so we've been having a number of 3 quite large deals this year. And then we're looking for a number of other deals twice as big in this upcoming year. I don't want to make any estimations on what our current valuation is, but I would think we could be in a very healthy position. Among the 7 startups I've worked at, it's definitely one of the stronger ones I've been at. And I've been through 3 acquisitions.
That's very helpful. And Greg, what type of mentorship and training opportunities are available at Foghorn? Is there a structured mentorship system? Because candidates who join early in their career, right, with 2 to 3 years of experience, they expect a good amount of mentorship and training over the period of time.
Well, I'm hoping for, like the 3 to 10 year kind of person to hire. So if I have a candidate that's applied that's 3 years and another that's 10 years, I'll be a bit more biased to the 10 years, partly because as we are charging and doing consulting for clients, I like to have like the middle year range of experience for data science. The median would probably be 5 to 7. And so if we can be at least as experienced as our clients. So as far as training and mentoring, a lot of it is both on when we're setting up the projects, then a lot of the project design I would have already set up and been able to do some mentoring just in my project plan and the list of sprints. So I have a series of 2-week sprints throughout the project. So part of the mentoring will be just in setting up the project plan and the sprints. Other parts of the mentoring will just be working with your peers. If you're, say, working on an LSTM, then you can just put out a call in Slack, hey, who else has worked on LSTM? I have a question about this. And it's pretty easy to start a conversation going. People are pretty excited to talk about different kinds of algorithms or approaches. And then some of the times, if we get stuck into a tougher problem where we have to start reading papers, then I might ask for, hey, volunteer. If there's some people that are less structured or on a less occupied, maybe they're in a mode for a few days waiting for some data to come for the next phase of a client project, then they might have some time to read some papers. So we can get together like reading buddies to get together and go through with a review of literature. Like what are the best practices in face recognition? What are the best practices in this kind of nuance or that kind of nuance? So we can get support for people in different ways. We also have a thought leadership seminar series. It's a slot that people can present on. So it could be at the end of a project, you might present, oh hey, I've got these cool results, or I use this new algorithm. I'm checking out something with a Bayesian belief network that's looking good, or another person might be doing some work on compiling TensorFlow. So those kind of things can get shared, or just a review of literature going on for leading up to a new project. So some of that will be also cross-training opportunities.
Great. So let's take a few questions from our live attendees. So Aishwarya asks, how do you gather data from your client team?
So we have a technical services group. So they'll install the sensors if there's not sensors already. Maybe third or half of the clients already have sensors. So they might just send us like a simple CSV file, field names at the top, comma delimited. So something be fairly familiar to data scientists. Also, if we do install sensors, then we may like look at the first day just to validate that the sensors are populating correctly as we expect. And then we may wait a month for a minimal amount of data to come in to analyze, and then start the analysis project. It really depends on if we're doing some kind of faults, what the fault rate is, how many faults we want to have before we start doing a model, and so on, things like that. So the Foghorn platform has all sorts of different infrastructure and middleware to handle MQTT or OPC to get sensor data to stream in. And then that can stream into the Python program. But basically, if you start off writing your Python programs as if you're reading a CSV files, it's not too hard to change it to add it back into the Foghorn platform. So that's how the data would come in. So we have a publish and subscribe architecture. So the data goes onto a data bus, it would get published, then it could get picked up in HTML and be read by the Python program. And then we can publish it back out. We also have an InfluxDB, that's a time series database that could be part of the product. So if you need to save things in a data store, then that would be available.
That's great. Yep.
So we also have a Foghorn Viz, that's a data visualization, a real-time graphing tool, kind of shows all sorts of different plot formats for the various sensors, what's happening in the most recent 30 seconds, or an EDA exploratory data analysis tool with 14 different analysis sections of pre-built reports, just to make it easy to get some information out. And that would pull data out of the time series database. So that would give you like a 20,000 foot view of your data over let's say a couple of weeks, over a couple hundred sensors.
That's very helpful. Thank you so much, Greg. So the next question is from Jinail Zhang. Jinail says, how big is usually a team for any project at Foghorn?
The biggest team is for one manufacturing company, and that's about 4 people. Then after that, for other team, we might have 2 people, and then just 1 person per team or per project after that. But even if there's 2 people on a team, usually there's a natural grouping where 1 person might be working on one part. They might own one kind of model from one kind of sensors, and another person might own another model with another kind of sensors. The sensors could be from different cities. So some of the like the one large manufacturing client that is the biggest one names the plants based on the cities because they have no more than 1 plant in the city. So we might be working on 4 concurrent projects, or we might take a large project and break it up. If a client wants something done in 3 months, then we might do 1 person owns the face recognition. Another person owns all the safety devices on the person. Are they wearing a hard hat, glasses, vest, earplugs? A third person might be looking at the safety in the environment. Is there slip? Is there electrical hazards? Is there fall hazards? And a long list of things. So we might break things up in different ways. But basically you would have ownership and responsibility and bragging rights on your successes.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Greg. Our next question is again from Aishwarya. She says, what are the common tools used by data scientists at Foghorn team?
Well, the Python scikit-learn, and then you can use whatever Python editor you like. It could be a Jupyter Notebook or PyCharm as you like. So for TensorFlow, any kind of TensorFlow tools that you like would be fine. So if we have some Android work, so then there's an Android simulator for that. So, but those would be some of the kinds of tools we use. We have servers in-house with GPUs. If we need to use cloud resources, we can certainly do that.
Great, thank you so much. So the next question is from Dhruveen Patel. Dhruveen says, is entry-level position available for data scientists?
If entry level means out of school, then
yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, the answer would be no. We could do internships as long as I get one of my people to volunteer to be responsible for the intern. But it would not be a kind of intern that could switch over to a full-time position at the end of the internship. So if that's something that's not of interest to somebody, then we wouldn't be able to help that out. The intern we could do any time of the year, although I realize for interns it's best in the summertime when school is out.
And how long is this internship? Is it 3 months or like 6 months?
Uh, we could do it 3 months. I don't think we have less of a requirement or structure to it than the student may have. So if a student is working around when they're full-time and not full-time. But other than that, just we would find some independent work that we could break off. We'd want to give the student something that they could brag about on their LinkedIn profile, an accomplishment, but something that's also useful and helpful to a part of what we're doing. So it could be prototyping something that we're doing for a product or a demo, kind of thing. Again, we like to focus on something that they can own. And then since if they're going to be here a short time, then we don't have to have them learn everything soup to nuts. We can just try and focus on what they need to know for a given kind of task.
That's helpful. Our next question is from Levin Lee. Levin says, are projects strictly done by Python? Is R an option?
I'm certainly a happy R user. We haven't been doing any R. We support some R in the way that if you create a R model and you export it as PMML, predictive modeling markup language. But right now, what we import from PMML is just regression, k-means clustering, and k-nearest neighbors. So, and it also doesn't support pre-processing in R. So we're primarily a Python shop. But we recognize I'm more interested, if you're, say, a 10 R programmer and maybe a 5 on a 1 to 10 scale in Python, we can talk to you because we want good thinkers and people that can adapt. And so if you've met some of the other qualifications like deploying 3 models, they don't have to be 3 Python models. You could be 1 in Python, 1 in R, 1 in MATLAB. That's fine. I just want good thinkers.
That's helpful. Thank you. Our next question is, if I get selected, who would I be reporting to for this position?
That would be me. So
okay.
The head of the data scientist. So it's been growing fast. As I said, it's been going from 2 to 15. I might get some other middle management at some time. I'll have to wait to see if I can get some more senior people. But if there is somebody that might be more senior, perhaps has had some management experience in the past, maybe has deployed like 15 models or something, I would definitely be open for that because I could definitely use some help.
Great, thank you so much. The next question is, Greg, what were some of the steps you took to become a data scientist? What did your journey look like to landing your job at Foghorn?
Okay. Well, I started out in data science back in 1989. There was the PDP books, the parallel distributed processing books from Rumelhart, and I was training my first neural nets. And then I got into my first convolutional neural nets, time delay neural nets for speech recognition. So from there, I went on to get some offers in speech recognition companies, Dragon Systems and Kurzweil, but also this little place called American Express that was doing this thing called targeted marketing, but the pay was like 50% better and it sounded like a better business model. So I went into the targeted marketing. So 7 startups later, I came to Foghorn because I always liked areas where there can be new innovation, kind of greenfield. And the IoT, industrial Internet of Things, seemed to be a good place, kind of like the way the cloud computing was a decade ago, kind of new and a lot of things were coming up. So it's fun to be in a startup. It's fun to be in an area that has new growth opportunities and new things to figure out. I like a greenfield feeling kind of environment. So, and I like the value prop here. We've got a good value proposition that we can offer our clients with our software products.
Great. So thank you so much, Greg, for your time, for sharing all your insights about Foghorn for the job position and the application process. I have a few more questions in our chat box, but as we are reaching the top of the hour, I'd like to wrap up the call with some final guidelines on the application and the next steps. So again, thank you so much for your time.
Okay, thank you so much.
Great. So please allow me to share my screen for one last wrap up. Okay. So thank you everyone for your attention. I can see there are a lot of live attendees on our YouTube channel. So thank you for maintaining the decorum there and for sharing your questions. We have covered hopefully enough to get you to know Foghorn, and maybe you're considering already applying for one of the job opportunities we have talked about today. That's great. So here is the very simple process. You'll have to apply for the position on the High Counselor website. After this webinar in the next few hours, you'll get an email with a link where you'll have to submit your resume and some of the important questions that Greg mentioned during this webinar. So please keep an eye on your email and you'll get the link over there. So as I said, we are now approaching the top of the hour, so we are going to wrap up this event. I hope you benefited from attending this webinar. We're going to send you a survey in the next few hours, so please take a time to fill it out and let us know what you thought about today's event. Also, we'll keep you informed about our upcoming career webinars. Tomorrow, we are going to conduct a webinar on software engineering job roles. So if you or any of your friends are looking for career in software engineering, please look out for the next email. So that's it for today. Thank you again for attending and hope we'll see you in our next webinar. Thank you. Thank you so much, Greg, for your time again.
Oh, thank you.
Have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye.
Bye.